Welcome to the Talk and Chatter experience powered by Gasoline Alley Harley-Davidson, Really Motorcycle Tyres Australia, and TCX Boots. All right, mate. I haven't done one of these for a while, actually. So the last one I did was with Troy in here.
Oh yeah.
At the start of the year,
Yep.
and that was about February. So it's been a little while. So welcome, Paul Free.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming in, mate. It's I've spoken to you about this for a little bit of time. Originally, the conversation came up. You were with Troy Herfoss in a van, he was telling me, and you'd listened to one of the things, and Troy said, "Oh, you should try and get Paul on," and rah-de-rah-de-rah. And here we are, so welcome, mate. Thanks for coming along.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Yeah.
Mate, who's Paul Free?
Where do I start? It's I'm just a normal bloke that grew up, was born and bred in country Victoria in a little place called Kahuna, which is just near Echuca. Most people probably would have heard of Echuca in Victoria. Grew up there on a dairy farm and just spent the best part of my first 15, 16 years or whatever in the bush, because our property backed right onto a state forest. You'd never get away with what we did now, but back then in the mid to late 70s, 80s,
Yeah.
we just spent. I've got two brothers. Older brother 2.5 years older than me, Dean, and younger brother 2.5 years younger than me, Brad. We just spent our whole life. As soon as we get home from school, we're just in that bush thrashing the motorbikes.
Yep.
And that was our life. We just always just had farm bikes. Dad would never buy us a bike other than what was purposeful for his farm.
Yep.
And we just thrashed those as hard as we could.
What was it about motorcycles? What was the fun?
I don't really know.
Yep.
I don't know. It was just, for us, it was just what it was, It was just riding motorbikes. It was just such an enjoyable thing for a young boy and his brothers to just get out there and be just blasting through the bush.
Yep.
And like I say, you couldn't do it now. It'd be just no chance of it. But anyway, it was just, our life was just in that bush.
Yep. How was it growing up in Echuca, mate? Like that's a big place, obviously, big farming area and everything like that. How was that?
Yeah, like I said, we were in Kahuna, which is about 40 minutes drive down river from Echuca. I spent secondary school until I was 15. I got out of there as quick as I could out of school. I hated school.
Yep.
Secondary school, it was in Echuca. Fantastic place.
Yeah.
It's a great place to live and grow up and be a part of that community there. My younger brother, Brad, he's still there. He works for a company called Kagome, a food production company, Japanese owned. He's still there. My older brother's, he's not far up the road in Kyabram. She's just shifting into Moama. But they're still in the area. My mum's still there.
Wow.
My dad passed away a few years ago, but they're all still there.
Yep.
And it's a great part of the world. Very, very busy now, Echuca, compared to when I was there and living.
Yep.
Just so busy, but it's like everywhere.
It's one of those things as well, like you're saying about, is it Kahuna? Is that how you say it? You can tell a good place by who stays. Hey, like it's if people stay generational, your brothers around the area still, it's still a good place. Like still has the good foundation, doesn't it?
Yeah, for sure it does. And it's just, I think they're just great communities.
Definitely. What was the farm bikes? What were they?
CT, generally always Hondas. My dad was a Honda man.
Really?
CT 125, CT 110, 185. Those sort of bikes. That was always the ag bike of choice. CT 200.
Yep.
Yeah.
So always Hondas.
Generally, he did make a switch a couple of times, but he come back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's really interesting to see what you've done through a motorcycling career. It sort of it goes through, doesn't it?
It does, yeah, 100%. I have I still have a long, a good relationship with Honda Australia still now, and it's my alliance is there for sure.
When you first started riding, obviously you went to racing at a point. Were you good? Was it a natural thing? Was it a let's run into trees? Was it how was it? How was riding at the start through the bush?
It was a lot of fun, and but there was a bit of few accidents and stuff happened as well. You know, like I remember once I was with my older brother and another mate that was like a neighbour, and they were both older than me, obviously, and we were going through. I was 10, and on one of Dad's CTs, and we were thrashing through the bush flat out, and I got caught in a rut, like it was after the bush, just dirty, muddy roads, and I got caught in a rut, and I got launched off and hit a tree, and 10 years old, I busted my right femur. And I destroyed that bike. Like, the old man was filthy. And anyway, Mum and Dad coming down. My brother went home on the bike and said to Dad, Paul's had a crash. He's down in the bush down the back there, and I think he's really hurt himself. And Dad's like, bullshit, he'll be right. Look, go and get him. And he said, no, I think you need to come and get him, Dad. And so they come down in the old Holden station wagon they had, and they just loaded me up in the back of the wagon, busted leg, femur, and I spent six weeks in traction in hospital. 10 years old, man, that was 6 weeks of hard labour. Anyway, that was the worst of the accidents, but, yeah, there was plenty.
Mate, that's and a time before mobile phones.
Oh.
Like, you, and you remember this as well with the, when something happened, it was the fastest ride back to a property. So someone's down in the bush or something's happened, it's like, all right, the race is now to get back home. So before phones and everything else. It's a different time, eh?
It is, very, very different. Yeah, absolutely. To be able to make that call was, and I remember my brother, he got flogged, he got absolutely flogged by Dad because Dad blamed him for it, and poor bastard, he copped it.
So the sad point to this as well, obviously, is you've done 6 months there. You didn't even get to fix the bike, obviously. So I guess there's a bit of A and B there for that, mate.
It was wrecked.
Did you get any sympathy at any point there for the 6 months, or was it?
It was.
No, Paul's crashing.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, like they come and saw me every day in hospital, and it was. It was a very difficult time for everyone. But anyway,
because hospital would have been at Echuca then.
No, Kahuna. I was in Kahuna Hospital,
Kahuna
Hospital. It was about 15 minutes drive from the farm to hospital, and Mum and Dad would come and see me every day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I was going to say, if it's a Echuca 40 odd minutes or something, that's going to be a bit of a different one. Yeah.
No, it was closer, but anyway, it was a challenge.
Did you enjoy growing up on a farm?
Yeah, I did. I loved it. Yeah. I hated milking cows.
Yep.
I'll be honest, I hated it. And my dad, he was one of those old farmers, that just like, a working boy's a happy boy. And that was what it was, know, like he had to have you working.
Yep.
And anyway, he was always riding us flat out. But whenever we got a chance, we were out of there and out in the bush. But it was good. I learned a lot. I think it's sort of, rounded me a lot with, a lot of understanding. And we were, like I said, I was riding motorbikes at 3 years old, and I was driving cars at probably, 8 or 9 or less.
Yeah.
And so like that sort of stuff was just natural shit to me,
Yeah, it's a great work ethic thing too, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
It is, like I remember when I got involved in started racing, and when I started racing in the early 90s, I was obviously still living at home, and I'd keep my bikes there, and and work on them in the workshop at home. And I remember Dad had always come to me, like I was always tinkering around with something, you know.
Yep.
And Dad would come to me all the time and say, "When do you stop stuffing around with that thing and come and do some real work," you know? And that was, to him, what I was doing was just stuffing around, you know. And it wasn't until the latter part of my racing career when I started going somewhere and doing something with that he jumped on board and started respecting it.
That's interesting, isn't it? Because the farming idea that's everything. Isn't it? That's your income. It's your house. It's your everything. It revolves around the farm.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
And we were involved in farming, or they were. My oldest brother Dean, he left school at 15 as soon as he could get out of school.
Yep.
To work on the farm, and he obviously loved it. And so you're dead right. Like farming, it is your whole life, and it's got to be. And we went through a period there of, I think, some really good times of dairy farming, and then in the latter part when I sort of when I left home. They got into drought periods. They got into, anyway, it got really, really tough. And I think there was a period there where it was either get big or get out, you know, and dairy farming, like the main property was 100 acres. They had another 100 acres that they leased for a period of time and then bought up the road. So they had sort of 200 acres, milked sort of 150 cows, 180 cows type of thing. And that's when I say there was a period there where it was either get big or get out, you know, and so they got a bit bigger, and then drought, and then it just got very, very difficult for them, and then they sold out, sold everything. It was probably ultimately the end of my dad. Like, like he couldn't accept that they had to get out, and he sort of went downhill fast from there. He wasn't very old, so that's when my brother bailed out. Once they sold, they separated everything off, and kept the family home, where Mum still lives now.
Wow.
And just sold off the rest of the farm and all the animals and such like, and my brother moved on and he's managing a big dairy farm in Strathmerton, I think it is, for Tony Parrish.
Wow.
He's still in that game, still loves it. But they've been through, and I think I can say this for probably all farming, it's not all beer and skittles, and they go through some pretty hard times and some pretty good times, it's not consistent for them at all.
Yep. Yeah, it's very one year to the other.
Yeah.
There's not a 10 year that you go, this is our good chunk of. It's very one year to the other. So
Yeah.
One of our close friends, he's got a dairy. Their family got a dairy farm up in Dorrigo, down back at Coffs Harbour, basically up in the hills.
Yeah.
And talking about work ethic and whatnot, we go for rides at their property. They've got a dairy farm, so we can park and camp and stay there. But he'll milk the cows in the afternoon, and then you'll hear the work ute screaming down the driveway, and it'd be late 60s, maybe even early 70s. I'm not exactly sure, but going putting fuel drums out in the bush for all us riders, because he'd lead a trail ride the next day. So he'd be out, you hear the ute come back in, 8 o'clock, time for dinner, bed. I remember one of these particular trail rides, and every time there's something similar. Next morning, up at 3, had to plaster a wall in the bathroom before work, then milk the cows, then was down at our tents at 6:30. Up, come on, we've got to go riding. Ride 100 k's through some gnarly bushland, find the fuel drums that he buried through the night before, and come back in. All right, guys, I've got to take the road back. You know the way now. Everything's all good. I've got to go milk the cows, do everything, cook dinner for everyone, bed. And that was what we seen of a weekend, but that was actually life.
Yeah.
Like everything, like if it wasn't for the trail ride, he'd be working on equipment, working around the farm, but every day was 3 till 8 o'clock, 3 in the morning till 8 o'clock at night. There was something on. It's a big process.
Yeah, it is. It's a big commitment. Yep. It's a big commitment, and it's something that I encourage people to go and see, or you
Yeah.
know, if they can
Yep.
get to experience what farming is and what it means. It's not all beer and skittles, like I said.
No, it's
Yeah.
definitely not. It's a lot of hard work and good times. There is some really good times too, but
100%.
geez, there's the opposite too. So
100%.
where'd racing come into it? You mentioned it, but how did you get into racing from riding around on CT200 ag bikes to racing motorcycles? That's a different way.
Yeah, it is. I did my apprenticeship. Like I said, I left school at 15. Hated school, but when I look back now, and when now I have my own children,
Yep.
and my wife has you know, taught them the way that she has through homeschooling and such like. What I have learned is I probably needed a different way of learning.
Yep.
And because I wasn't getting that, I was probably a right little arsehole. And you know what I mean?
Yep.
So I hated school and I wanted to get out of there as quick as I could. And so when 15 come, I was gone.
Yep.
So I was lucky enough to get a job as a mechanic, apprentice mechanic at the local council in Kahuna. And so, yeah, doing that, had to go to trade school. I spent the first year doing trade school in Bendigo, block release. So I'd go down there for 2 weeks at a time.
Yep.
And that was fun.
You enjoy that?
The schooling was okay, but then what we did after hours was, I was 15. You couldn't get away with this stuff anymore.
Yeah.
Anyway, that was all cool. And then the next 3 years, I chose to do a course in Melbourne at Kangan Batman TAFE at Coburg.
Mm-hmm.
A heavy stream. It was the longest course you could choose to do as an apprentice mechanic.
Yep.
It was a huge amount of hours. Anyway, so I'd go down there and do block release of a week. I think it was a week at a time. Anyway, so down there, one of my instructors, Kevin Ireland, he was a mad motorcycle guy, and I had bought a GSXR 750.
Yep.
Wasn't meant to have it, but I had it.
So what age were you then?
17. When I started down there,
Yep.
I would have been like 16 and a half or something like that.
Wow.
Going to Melbourne to TAFE. And then at 17 and 9 months, got my licence.
Yep.
And that was like nothing like now. Like I rode my bike into the local cop shop in Kahuna.
Yep.
I knew the sergeant.
Yep.
I was actually seeing his daughter. And
This could go good or bad.
and he said, get on your bike, ride up there, do a U-turn and come back. So I did that and he said, no worries, you're fine. And that was getting my licence. And
That's it.
7 and 9 months, had my licence on a motorbike.
Yep.
Straight away went and bought myself a GSXR 750. Like I said, wasn't meant to have it, but anyway, rode that. And my instructor, like I said, Kevin Ireland, one of my main guys at the TAFE in Melbourne, he had the exact same bike.
Yeah.
So we hit it off flat out. So we were doing going riding here and riding there, and he said, we should do some track days. Righto, we'll do some track days. And I was immediately going pretty fast on this thing, and he said, you should start racing. And I'm like, oh man, don't know about that, you know. So then I started getting involved in club racing. I actually sold that and bought an RGV 250.
Yep.
First one of the banana swing arms. I think it was like 91.
Good era. Yep.
And started racing. And within going from nothing to that first year in 91, I did my first Australian Championship round was at Eastern Creek.
Wow.
Yeah, in that first year, and I finished. I think I finished 13th or something like that in the races at Eastern Creek. And like, man, you know how heavy ARRC, it was called then,
Yep.
was with the Matt Milladens, and the names were endless. It was like 250 proddy, you'd line up, to qualify, and there was like 50 plus bikes to qualify, and it was so heavy. Not pumping up my tyres, but like it was heavy.
It's a deep field, isn't it?
It was heavy.
And interestingly, now that 2024, everyone still talks about that era of 250 Proddy, best breeding ground that's ever sort of happened, and everything.
Yeah.
Everyone still talks about that time.
Yeah.
Hey.
Yeah, it was really, really tough, and I did that first event, first AWRC Australian Championship event, finished 13th or whatever it was, and come back to my local club for the next round, and the local club people said to me, like, once you go, because I was just doing all these events like on a state level at Broadford, Broadford, Phillip Island, Broadford, Winton, and they said to me, once you move away from these local tracks and you go to experience something else, you'll come back so much faster to our next event. And I did. It was, and finishing 13th in my first AWRC, like my local club, Hartwell Club, they thought I was the next Matt Mladen, you know what I mean? Like, anyway, it didn't ever eventuate like that. But, it was a pretty cool time, and like I was living the dream, absolutely living the dream, paying for it all myself and scraping up every dollar I could from mum and dad, me, anyone I could get money off.
So what was the apprenticeship that you did there? Like, what was how? That was obviously a mechanical. Yeah,
heavy vehicle, heavy stream they called it.
Heavy stream.
So working on trucks, and heavy equipment.
Yep.
Yeah.
Gee, it was kind of lucky, not lucky, but you met that trainer.
Yeah.
That's changed the path of life a little bit.
100% changed my life.
Yeah.
100%, yeah. Would I have been here? No.
Would you have stayed working on trucks?
No.
That's a good question.
No, it was, man, I was so desperate to make money.
Yep.
Like, I was, before I got my licence, I was riding my push bike to work every day in Kahuna. So it was like a 15K ride back and forth every day.
Yep.
The only time Mum would come and get me is if it was pouring rain. And then, on a weekends, I'd work next door to the council. There was a trucking company that run what they called gut trucks, so delivering offal.
Oh yeah, yep.
From the abattoirs to Melbourne.
It's horrible. As nice a name as it is, isn't it?
And it was the work. I was just doing service work on those trucks and trailers, and it was horrendous, absolutely horrendous.
They'd stink.
Oh man, you got no idea. Anyway, I'd do that every weekend, just to make money, just to go racing.
Yep.
And because that was, when I wasn't racing, I was working on those gut trucks.
Yep.
And through the week, I was working on anything at the council, from a whippersnipper to a bloody D7 dozer.
Yep.
It was. I learned a lot about life.
Tell you what, it fast forwards at that point, doesn't it? Like when you get into that, you do like an apprenticeship, or you do time working on all those different devices.
Yeah.
Everything's in fast forward, learning-wise.
Yeah, 100%. Like, I was, like 1 minute I'm, rebuilding a whippersnipper motor, a carburettor or something like that, and next thing I'm welding up, hard coating the tips of a bucket of a D7 dozer, or, you know what I mean? Like, it was just, my knowledge base working at that council, I'll never look back and say that was bad.
Yeah.
I learnt so much, very, very broad, and I think that's probably why I'm quite diverse now in my work. The way I can take things on and look at things is nothing can't be done. Do you know what I mean?
Definitely. Definitely. It's, and I think going through a council, I started a mechanical apprenticeship at council as well. So Plant Fleet Services up here in Brisbane.
Yep.
And I was talking to a friend only 2 weeks ago about it, and he's like, now, because back then you'd paint the trailers, you'd be working at the tip on a machine, or you'd be working roadside on something, or you'd be servicing a car or piece of power equipment. And exactly what you were saying, he goes, now it's all divisioned. It's like, oh, that's such a shame, because you had such a good rounding of being able to touch everything, and how things change in that time. Because like nowadays, if anyone was to do an apprenticeship, I would have once said the council's like such a great place to do it, because you get that rounding of every,
Yeah.
The Rangers have motorbikes, so you're servicing motorbikes,
Yeah.
so everything. But now it's definitely changed a bit by the sounds of it. So
Yeah, that's sad.
yeah, it is. It's a funny one. So so Hartwell was the club. That was the first real club.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah, and they were really, really good to me. They took me under their wing and really looked after me. Yeah,
Yep.
yeah, country boy, and I don't know. Yeah, myself and Brad, my younger brother, he used to always come to all the events and everything with me and sort of work on my bike and
Yep.
keep that prepped up. And he wasn't a mechanic, but he he was probably better than most.
Yep.
And yeah, we had an unbelievable time. Yeah, unbelievable time.
So RGV was the first race bike.
Yeah, so I raced 250 Proddies from 91 to the end of 94.
Yep.
Then stepped up onto 600s,
Mm-hmm.
and then rode 600s from 95, 96, 97, and then 98 moved on to factory Suzuki Superbike and 600,
Yep.
and 99 the same, and then 2000, the start of 2000, I was just on Superbike.
All right. It's a fast program, isn't it? When you look at it from that point to there, that's a lot of action, isn't it?
Oh man, there was there was a lot going on, and at that time in my life, like it was just, I was living the dream. Like,
Yep.
absolutely living the dream. Yeah.
You're racing obviously all the time. What were you working at the same time?
Yeah, so I left the council. I'd have to really stretch my memory now. I moved to I moved to Echuca. I moved to Echuca, must have been 95. Must have been 95.
Yep.
Because, I went and worked at a Kawasaki dealership in 95, yes. And because, Jeff Beer, the local Kawasaki dealer there, he was sponsoring me and supporting me through Kawasaki Australia.
Yep.
So that was my first move into 600 Supersport.
Yep.
So I did that, lived there for a period of time, and then moved to. I'm just trying to think now. When I moved to Melbourne, must have moved to Melbourne in about 96, I think. Because I had a good friend, Sean Gallagher, who's a bit of a loose guy, but he's a good friend, and I knew him through racing,
Yep.
Brett Oliver and a few other dudes, and Sean said to me, like, mate, if you're going to continue your racing career, you need to move to Melbourne. Like, Melbourne was the hub for
Yep.
racing. So he said, you need to get your ass to Melbourne. So that's what I did. I packed up, myself and my girlfriend at the time, packed up and moved to Melbourne. I'm pretty certain that was 96. And lived with a mate down there, Matty Finch. He was from Bendigo, and that was how I got sort of moved along, and then Melbourne was the home for a long time.
Yeah.
Yeah, till the end of 17.
That's a long time.
Yeah.
What did 250 Proddies teach?
Like it taught me a lot about racecraft.
Yep.
A lot about racecraft, and over those years, like I competed against some incredibly talented guys that each had their own thing and their own style and their own way of going about things. But it was tough. I don't know why, but for some reason I could always get it right at state level, Victorian Championship state level, but not at Australian Championship level. I don't know why. It never clicked at Australian level.
Yep.
Like I won so many Victorian titles, but not Australian Championship. And like in those days, the Victorian titles was pretty much as strong as the Australian Championships because everyone from Australia had come to compete at, especially Phillip Island. And the Victorian titles was 2 or 3 rounds there in those days, So, but yeah, 250 Proddies was just so strong. It was so deep, and it was just, you just learnt so much about racing if you wanted to get on with it.
Yep. And you could take it with you, like, you're doing everything, isn't it? The sort of thing, like you get to 600s, there's a little bit more supports and stuff like that, but 250s, everything's on you, isn't it?
Yeah, it was 100%. And you were because those bikes come out of the factory as they did, and the regulations were such that you weren't meant to do anything to them. You weren't allowed to do really anything to them. And because they were 2-stroke 250, they were quite fast.
Yep.
And so the cost was minimal to build them.
Yep.
You're really just putting race class on them.
Yeah, it's a good way of racing, isn't it?
When I look back, it was for someone like me that was getting into it, like it was just perfect.
Yep.
So yeah, it was a great start.
Who was the hardest competitor in the Proddies? Well, there's a handful. Was 2 handfuls long for 250 Proddies in Australia. It's a deep field.
It was.
Is there a good memory? Is there one that's really a standout?
Probably. Oh man, Paul Young.
Okay.
Paul Young was in the latter part of my Proddy career when I was going exceptionally good. Him and I bashed bars flat out all the time. And, but I shouldn't. There was so many guys that come through that era of 250 Proddy. Like I said before, Matt Mladen. I'm going to miss so many guys in saying a list, but Fred Baines.
Right.
I don't know whether you ever heard of Fred Baines. He was a Victorian guy that was taken it to the Australian Championship level. He was pretty damn special.
Yep.
There was just so many guys. The list is too deep. Like I'd make a fool of myself if I started listing guys, because I'd be forgetting so many. Yeah,
it was definitely like everyone that done something has ridden 250 Proddies.
100%.
Very, very hard. So 90, what was it, 95 or 96 to 600?
Yeah, 90, 95, yeah.
And that would have been a 600 Kawasaki.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
How was that?
Yeah, I'm actually mistaken there. In 95, I rode a 95 I rode a Yamaha. Yeah, 95 I rode a Yamaha, 96 I rode a Kawasaki. Yeah, that's the way it went.
Yamaha YZF 600.
Yes.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. With support from a nice old fella by the name of Graham Lang, who just passed away.
Right.
Scott, timing Scott. The timing guys at
from CompuTime.
CompuTime.
Yeah.
Scott's father.
Oh, really?
He just passed away. Graham was a lovely old gent, and he supported me through 95. Yeah, with my first attempt on a 600, and that went good and bad. I'll never forget this one. Coming down through Phillip Island, down through turn 3.
Yep.
And I'm full steam behind Malcolm Campbell, and at that stage he was back off superbikes and on the 600s.
Yep.
And Wally was a proper motorbike rider. And anyway, I'm full steam behind him down through turn 3, and I think it was Jason Love was on a Kawasaki, and he'd already gone through and his motor had blown up, and he dumped a pile of oil at turn 3, and like I said, I was right on Wally's back wheel, and we come through 3, and Wally's thing had a huge slide, and I've just looked at that and I've just gone, oh fuck, I'm in strife, and I've just tucked the front, and the things back in those days, there was in the middle of turn 4, there was a huge like bunch of trees, and they had a big earth tyre wall around them.
Yep.
And I've lost the front on this Yamaha, and the thing's just hit the grass and took off, and I've skidded one way and it's gone the other way, and I stopped skidding and I've looked around and I'm like, where's my bike? I can't find my bike. And it's hit that tyre wall in the trees, and it's took off up into the centre of the trees. It was that far into the depth of the trees. I had to get a crane to get it out.
Oh.
And the front of it was just completely written off.
Yep.
And they got it back, and they had it on a pallet, and I'm like, oh man, what am I going to do? And Graham come to me, he put his arm around him, he said, this is Graham Lang from Yamaha, and he said, don't worry, mate, it'll be all right, I'll fix it up. And he took care of it.
Damn.
And it was just like, man, so, yeah, I couldn't have fixed it.
Yeah.
And anyway, so that was Graham Lang at Yamaha, and I could never thank him enough for that. But, 95 that was. 96 I moved on to a Kawasaki, and I had support from Bruce Collins on a ZX6 and on Metzeler.
Yep.
And Bruce was very, very good to me, and looked after me with support, with tyres, and paid for a lot of the running costs of that bike that year. Very challenging year. Very challenging year. We had a lot of crashes, a lot, and I just never had any feeling in the front. And anyway, so that was 96.
Yep.
97, I moved on to a Suzuki with support from Phil Tayton.
Yep.
And at that point there would have been about the point, I think, through mid-97 that I actually started working for Phil, just as a mechanic in his workshop.
Good era of Suzuki's too.
PTR, yeah.
Yep.
He was running, he would have been running the factory team at that point, Superbike.
Yep.
And so he set up this Suzuki 600 for me.
Yep.
I had two of them. And, took us sold on the Australian Championships, had a really cracking year.
Yep.
Finished second to Sean Giles on the Honda, on the factory Honda. So that was a really good year, 97. And then 98, I moved into the factory Suzuki team on Superbike and 600 with Mark Willis. Troy Bayliss was the moving out of the seat at Suzuki on Superbike. And so he moved out to go to Europe, obviously, and then I moved into his spot.
Yep. On the Ansett.
Yep.
On the Ansett bike, say.
Yep.
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 Cool bike.
Yeah, but man, they were hard to ride.
Really bad?
Yeah, they were just really, really hard to ride.
Wow.
Like, I think I'll give full credit to anyone that could ride one of those things fast.
Yeah.
I'll never forget the time. One time, Phil, I said to Phil, like, man, these things are so hard to ride, Phil. Like, it's just so aggressive, like.
Yeah.
And he said, no, look at the power curve. Like, they're so smooth. And it looked smooth on the dyno. Like, it looked unbelievably smooth. But to ride it, it was just like the most gnarly two-stroke you could ever imagine,
Wow.
And because everything was full Superbike spec back in those days, it was like, everything was lightened. Everything, the crank was knife edge. You know what I mean? Like everything was had to be light, so that they could produce maximum power and in as as short a time as possible. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And as soon as you shut the throttle, the things would just go. There was no deceleration. There was no engine brake. There was no assistance. It was just raw.
Wow.
And like those things were making about 165, 170 horsepower from a 750.
Damn. Yep.
And they were just raw.
Yep.
Anyway, so it was challenging to ride that. I rode the 600 really well. I didn't ride the Superbike that well.
Yep.
So
that 750 era, those bikes were factory bikes, basically.
FIM Superbikes. Yeah. Same spec as World Superbikes, the bikes that were here, the Suzukis that were here that I rode, they were built by Phil from his knowledge, a few factory parts and a lot of his knowledge. And potentially they were faster than the World Championship factory bikes. Or they were. Because there was a time there when Peter Goddard was riding the World Championship bike, and here at Phillip Island, that particular year, Phil prepared a cylinder head and put onto that bike for Peter, and it was faster than the bike that he had from Europe. So Phil knew what he's doing. He's a very, very experienced guy.
That was a pretty cool era for superbike bikes, wasn't it? Like you had the YZF 750, like the SPs. They had R7.
Yeah,
like there's some pretty cool bikes in that time.
100%. Yeah. They were very, very cool. But when I look back at them now, they were dinosaurs.
Compared to what now is. Yeah. It's funny what's good at the time, hey?
Yeah, but like you're right. They were real special.
Yep.
And that little Suzuki 600 that I rode, man, I love that thing. It was so nice to ride, and the way Phil prepared it and set it up for me, it was lovely.
How's that for a learning curve? Like, obviously, this is getting further into motorcycles as racing and preparing things. How is that as a learning curve?
The riding or
both? Behind the scenes and the riding.
Yeah, so like I said, I was working for Phil.
Yep.
I started for him, I think it was probably mid-97 or somewhere there. I started working for Phil, and like what he taught me, was like I was doing, initially there I was just doing a lot of, general servicing and stuff like that for him, so stuff to take care of the shit that he didn't need to be doing. And then he taught me how to build motors properly. So I was building a lot. He was heavy into speedway. His background was speedway.
Right.
And so I was building a lot of speedway engines for Phil, and doing a lot of that sort of stuff. And then I got into a lot of tuning. He was one of the first to buy a dyno, a chassis dyno. And I was doing a lot of tuning for him with carburetors and stuff. We won't tell many people about that because we don't want to go back there.
Yep.
I learnt so much from Phil.
Yep.
I really, he grounded me in this industry. He really did.
Yep.
Him and Lynn, they took me under their wing and treated me like a son. It was just, it was an amazing time of life. It really was. They looked after me so well.
I got to ask, because you seem a very calm person, modern era, right? Now, you said about going back to tech, there were some wild times and stuff we couldn't do there. Was there a wild side at that time? Like, as you're racing, you're doing this, were you always calm, or as a racer, how were you?
I always said from a very early time that I thought I'd be a better technician than a rider.
Really?
Yeah.
Yep.
And racing was never easy for me.
Yep.
I had to work very, very hard for it. And I didn't know, I had no idea what I was doing.
Wow.
I had no idea what I was doing. And when I look back now, I understand when I work with guys of the current era, especially Troy Herfoss, when I look back now, I understand why I was successful at times and not at others.
Yeah.
And I understand that 100%. And if I had have had, nowadays every rider has a helper. Every rider has a rider coach. Every rider has blah, 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 an entourage behind them. And I'm not talking about your elite guys at MotoGP. I'm talking about guys that are riding 300s here. Back then, you were on your own.
Yep.
And you were just contracted to show up and ride the motorbike.
Yep.
You didn't have that support level. And like I said, I had no idea what I was doing. I was just a motorbike rider.
Yep.
And I'm sure if I had have had, and I couldn't afford to do anything more than that.
Yep.
In the sense that even if I had have had access to someone that I had to pay to help me, I probably wouldn't have been able to afford it.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
It does, yep.
But anyway, so not making excuses. I was hit and miss successful.
Yep.
Hit and miss successful. Sorry, I've got off the track a little bit. Yeah.
Makes sense.
Like I said, I always said I'd be better as a technician than a rider, and I had to work too hard at riding to make it work for me.
Yep. 2000, turn of the century, went overseas.
Yeah, I did.
What was that like?
Yeah, that was not the biggest mistake of my life, but one of.
Really?
Yeah.
Yep.
Suzuki Australia, they were cutting back to just superbike, which was a good thing.
Yep.
Because I struggled with both bikes.
Yep.
And I suppose that goes down to the talent or whatever was going on.
Yep.
Start of 2000, when I could just focus on superbike, I was going really good, and I thought I was the shit.
Yep.
And I think I was at the time before I went overseas, I think I was running second to Giles in the championship.
Yep.
Sean Giles was my teammate, and I got approached by Carl Pitt, Andrew Pitt's dad.
Yep.
Who's obviously Andrew was racing overseas. Carl was over there a lot, and he had a Suzuki team that was running in the World Supersport Championship, and come to him and ask, is there anyone that that could fill in for this dude that's injured? Carl come to me, said, do you want to come to Europe? Blah, 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 ride this bike. And I thought, man, the world's just opened up for me.
Yep.
So I jumped on a plane and went over, did a test. Test went quite okay. That was at Mazzano when it used to travel the other way.
Yeah, yep.
Yep. Good experience.
Great experience, yeah.
When I got to this bike, the thing looked unreal. Like I thought, man, I'm going to carve shit up on this thing.
Yep.
And it was the greatest pile of shit I've ever ridden. Like, it just did not work. And anyway, so I had a half-decent test. They asked me to come back. I went home, got all my stuff, and went back over there to move over there for a period of time.
Yep.
It didn't last very long because I went to a couple of events, but first big event I went to was at Hockenheim.
Yep.
And when they still run Hockenheim. And I was on the back wheel of Ruben Zaus.
Yep.
And we'd come into what they called the Parabolica section.
Mm-hmm.
And we're in qualifying and I'm going for it. And we come into there and I was right on his wheel, and he just decided to shut off and sat up, and I had nowhere to go because I was full noise on his back
Yep.
wheel, and just ploughed straight up the back of him, launched me off the thing, broke one of my feet so bad, and that was
Yep.
that was the end of that for me. Didn't last very long at all. I'll tell you a story about that. That I can't remember. Is it Dr. Costa?
Yeah.
I think he was the doctor back then.
Is the GP doctor and that? Yeah.
Yeah. So you might have heard some stories about him and his team and what they'll do to get riders back on the bike.
Yeah.
Mate, I had a metacarpal. I think it's called a metacarpal between in your main foot.
Yep.
My one coming down to my little toe, my left foot, it was completely broken and it was actually broken and actually, sat back up on itself. Do you know what I mean? Like, it
Yep.
wasn't just fractured; it was broken proper.
Yep.
Anyway, they took me into the medical centre and they X-ray and talk, and they said, one guy that could speak English come to me and said, we're going to perform something and it's going to hurt. I'm like, okay. All right. So they're getting all this tape and they're strapping up my foot.
Oh, no.
And I'm like, I was starting to sweat and getting.
So you're with it, like you're.
Oh yeah, no
Yep.
drugs at all, nothing,
Oh. Yep.
nothing. And a heap of them grabbed my torso and my upper leg, and then another two on the what they'd put this big taped on strapping like a sock out over my toe, and like a strapping, and there's 2 out there and like another 3 up this end, and they just hauled on this strap and obviously pulled the bone back across and then dropped it back into line. It was excruciating. I'll never ever forget the pain. And took another X-ray. Yep, they lined it up perfect and sent me on my way and said, "You'll be fine, mate. See you later." I didn't ride again that weekend because I was just in so much pain, but they said, "You'll be fine, strap it up." And, yeah. Anyway, I was so knocked about, I couldn't ride the motorbike. I tried to get on Sunday morning, but it was just, it wasn't going to happen. Anyway, so that was that.
That was at Hockenheim?
Hockenheim, yeah.
What was that like to ride?
Man, that was so fast.
Yeah.
Incredibly.
Through Pine Forest?
Yeah. On the little 600,
yep.
You're just in top gear, wound wide open for so long,
Yep.
It was insane. Yeah.
That would have been a cool place because it's one of the ones that is a victim of the modern time of track safety. I guess you've seen that firsthand, but that was an iconic venue, hey?
Yeah, it was pretty cool.
Would have been.
Yeah, it was pretty cool.
So what happened after that? Where'd you go to?
I went to the UK.
Yep.
I got an opportunity to ride a Kawasaki superbike in the UK.
Yep.
Myco Motorsport. Aidan Murcutt was his name, the owner.
Yep.
And that sort of went okay. I ended up having another major crash after a little while.
What was their superbike? ZX7?
ZX7,
yep.
yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, the guys made a mistake with a tyre warmer and I ended up the victim. Anyway, it was at Snetherton and coming off that back straight down into what they called the bomb hole, which is still there now, but it's sort of the track's different.
Yep.
And full steam down the back straight, first lap, and turned left into that section and the back of the bike's just come around on me, full lock and launched me and broken again.
Yep.
And anyway, that was it. I just said, I've had enough of this fun.
Yep. Home.
Yeah, home. Yeah, broken.
Oh.
Anyway, it's life and it's you live and learn.
Yeah. Good people in the UK, like good people in Europe. Like it was good to get there.
Yeah, it was.
Yep.
Yeah, it was. I would have liked it to have been a bit nicer, if you like, or a bit, I would have liked it for it to have worked.
Yeah.
But it didn't. And but anyway, people in the UK were good. They looked after me as much as they could, and it was an experience.
Come home. What'd you do?
I come home and what did I do? I resurrected myself with a job at Phil's.
Yep.
Obviously not going racing anymore. That was over, and started working for Phil, and. That was good. I enjoyed that. I started working for him as a tech straight away. Working with riders instead of riding.
Yep.
So it was that was good.
It's a good transition.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's early 2000s.
Yeah.
G6 R1000 comes out. That time you must have been just before that. So still 750, still for Superbike, eh?
Yeah.
And Giles's era starts to happen at that time.
Yeah.
That's right, eh?
100%.
Yep.
Yeah.
So he goes on the run of 3 titles, I think, from there.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
How was that?
That was good. I always worked with the 600 rider.
Yep.
So I had Daniel Stouffer in 2001, I think it was.
That's funny now, isn't it?
Yeah.
Wow. He must have been young then.
Him.
Yeah, Dan Stauffer. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, it was. It was a good year. I learned a lot.
Yep.
I learned a hell of a lot. And Phil taught me a lot. It was because in that sort of, I think what Phil did for me in the years that I worked for him was he taught me in a manner that, I think instead of throwing everything at me, he taught me, initially general stuff and then into engine building and then into tuning.
Yep.
And then in the latter part of my time with him, he taught me about suspension.
Yeah.
So he gave me a broad grounding, but not all at once, and I really respect him for that. It was I learnt things thoroughly, and the correct processes thoroughly because I wasn't rushed to
Yep.
to learn everything now, you know. And it was one, I'll never ever forget a question I asked Phil once, and I can't remember what period it was or when, but because that guy is so good at making motorcycles work in every facet of the motorcycle. And I said to him, like, man, how do you make everything you do turn to gold? And because he could,
Yep.
and he still does, and he still does today. And he said to me, mate, you'll get to an age, trust me, you'll get to an age, and it'll happen for you too. You've just got to hang in there and put in the hard yards, and it'll happen. And and I really respect that, you know, like it's I can probably say it nearly has, you know, like
It's unheard of now to have an educator teach everything too. Like this, the protection of nowadays, it's so difficult. Like it's such a nice thing to hear of that he taught you that every tool in the shed, you know, suspension, engine, tuning. Like, that's really nice, isn't it?
Yeah, no, him and Lynn, like I said, him and Lynn looked after me like family, like I was their son.
Yep.
And for many years, so it was really good.
How'd Honda come about?
Well, I
because it's not long after, I'm guessing.
Yeah. 2000 and October 2002, I started with Honda.
Yep. So when the conversation starts, do they say in 2004 we get the new Fireblade? Is it?
So
because it must have happened. It must have been discussed.
Yeah. So I left Phil and I started my own little business. I don't even know why I did this, to be honest. But I started my own little business. Yep. Just doing service work and bike setup and shit like that. And anyway, then I got a phone call from. I think the phone call initially come from Tony Hinton at Honda, who's still there today. And he said, we want to meet with you. And I said, no worries. So I go over there and I met with Tony Hinton, Glenn Griffiths, and Ian Juster. I don't know whether you've ever heard of Ian Juster.
No.
No, he's a great bloke, and he was the GM of motorcycles at the time. Yep. And so ultimately Ian employed me. But those guys interviewed me for a position of road race team manager. And that was sort of that was 2002, and sort of August, and so the job was large because they had no race team there because they disbanded everything. Must have been about 2000 or 1999. Yep. And they had a bit of a play over in World Supersport with Adam Ferguson, and. So they'd come back, they'd given that away, and they'd come back and they were regrouping. They wanted to start a new road race team and race Superbike and Supersport. I was their target to take on this job. I was 32 at the time.
Wow.
And anyway, so I took on this job. And like I said, it was massive. The first job I had to do was organise a transporter because they had nothing. Like they had nothing. Like when I went to their workshop where their race team was, which was just downstairs from MPE's head office on Summit Road in Melbourne, all they had was a cordless drill. That was it. That had the road race team's name on it.
So they literally just got rid of everything?
Everything else had been pilfered.
Wow. Yep.
Everything was gone. Yep. And... Anyway, so I suppose it created a clean slate for me to start. Yeah. That was the start. I'm certain it was October 2002 I started there, and employed by Ian. And I initially there, over that period of time, I was based in head office upstairs, and I had two guys on the floor in the workshop, Gary House and Luke Spence. And, they were working on the bikes. I would always do all the suspension work. Yep. So I'd go down there and give them a chop out because they had plenty enough to do on the bikes, let alone because we were racing Supersport and Superbike. Yep. 954.
I was about to say that.
Beast. Yeah. It was a beast.
As in good?
It was a was a bad motorbike.
Really?
But Brooksy was the only one that could get that thing to work because he was just an animal.
Yeah.
Anyway, so that was the project. Start from the start, get everything you need, build a truck. And you know where that trailer is today? Desmo Sport Ducati.
Is it?
Yeah, that's that old pile of shit.
No joke.
Yeah, I built that. That
Yep.
was a trailer that I sourced from a trucking yard up the street that we bought for next to nothing, and gutted it out. And Coxwell's is another name you would know,
Yep.
Craig Coxwell. Coxwell's have got a bodybuilding business up in Shepparton, and they turned it into a race trailer for us.
Damn.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
that's that truck.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
insane.
Yeah, so anyway, that was job one, and then establishing everything, getting it all, putting the people together to make it all happen. Nothing like a race team these days where you've got electronics engineers and you've got blah, 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 blah. It was all very raw,
Yep.
but, man, it was a massive project.
Who was your riders at the start? Josh Brooks is obviously one that was one of the first through the door.
Yeah, Brooksy
Shannon?
was Shannon. Brooksy was he was already contracted to Honda.
Yep.
And they sort of were doing something with Gary House, who was a long time associated as a tech and mechanic with Honda.
Yep.
Working with Brooksy, and Shannon was riding Supersport as a sort of a satellite deal, you know.
Yep.
So those two come in as the first two riders. Yeah.
Right, that's a wild duo to have under.
Well, you've
At
got
32, mate?
You've got no idea. You've got no idea.
Yeah, so I guess the era ends of 2004. Starts again, doesn't it? The new rules, basically for superbikes. We get a whole launch of thousands coming in.
Yeah.
That sort of starts your slate clean with Honda as well, I guess, yeah?
Yeah. It was it was a bit of a game changer for sure. That new bike, and it was different times for sure. So we only did 2003 with that old 954.
Yeah.
So we got that bike, that CBR 1000, that new shape in 04. And honestly, without a word of a lie, we put bodywork on it and put some suspension in it. I grafted some CBR 600 cartridges from Showa into the forks and a CBR 600 shock into it.
Yep.
And a slip-on muffler.
Yep.
We went to Wakefield Park on our way to Eastern Creek to the first round of the championship, and Krusty won. And it was like, oh, man.
Yep. Game changer.
It just could not get any rawer than that.
Yep.
It was just incredible. Yeah.
So the bike was good? Like, just developed good, like straight out?
Yeah.
Just
It
a little
was.
bit of work. And
It come a long way. Yeah.
Because the end of that era, the 929, 954, it was sort of well past its use by.
Yeah. And like I said, Brooksy was the only one that could tame it. Like, it was a horrible motorbike as a race bike, and like he was stretching the thing to race against, its competition, 1000cc bikes. Yeah.
How was Josh Brooks in 2004? Like, you've been a pretty wild young fella, I reckon.
2003, I'll tell you a story about. We clashed heads a lot, me and Brooksy.
Yep.
Yeah, we clashed heads a lot in the early part.
Yep.
We and he'll agree with this. Like, he was a right little asshole, and yes, that's like, I've always been fairly, like I still am now. I'm just like, this is business, and we're getting on with it in this manner, and Brooksy was, it was early 2003. We hadn't sort of long got going. I come into the truck this day, I think we were certain we're at Phillip Island, and Brooksy was, had his set of his 954 forks apart on the bench. I said, "What are you doing?" And he said, "I'm revalving the forks." I said, "No, you're not." And he said, "Yes, I am." And I said, "Mate, if you want to work on these things, go and pull a pair of overalls on and you can work with me. If you want to ride them, go and get your leathers on and fuck off out of this truck." And he's like, "Oh, okay, all right." So he took off, And that was a bit of a turning point for us. But yeah, we had plenty of clashes, and then ultimately we got along great, and our relationship has never been anything but since. But yeah, he was a wild character for sure. And putting him and Shannon together was never a great idea.
No.
It was Shannon was exactly the same as Brooksy. He was a smart ass, and he'll admit that today. You know, he was a young smart ass, and you know, like that. But that decision was already made before I got to Honda that those two are going to be the two riders. Yeah, look, you know, yeah. It didn't last long. We got through that first year. Shannon had to move out, and I got Adam Ferguson back from, he was riding in the States, and I got him back, and much to Stuart Strickland, who was the MD at the time, much to his disgust, but he said to me, I said to him, I want to get Adam back to ride. I think he's going to be really good for us. And he said to me, Freebie, this is on your head. If this goes bad, at the end of that year when Adam won the championship, he said that was the best decision you've ever made, rehire him for another year.
Wow. So why was there a bit of, like, did it go sour between 99 and there? Or
Yeah.
It had? Okay. Right.
With Adam.
Right.
They went and did that thing in World Supersport. Adam didn't give it the respect it deserved, didn't put in what he needed to put in, and it just went south. And yeah, anyway, so...
Because 2005, wow, that was an awesome time as well.
Yeah.
You know, obviously, so...
Yeah, so Adam won both 600 and Superbike championships in 04. And 05, Brooksy won both in 05.
05, yeah. So 04 straight into it, that's a damn good start, isn't it?
Yeah. I'll tell you, one of our best experiences we ever had, and I'll say this, probably one of our my best experiences ever, was winning that World Supersport race with Brooksy in 2004. I don't know if you ever remember that.
Yeah, how'd that come about?
So in 2003, Shannon wanted to ride World Supersport as a wild card. So back then, money was plentiful, and the Japanese were like all on board everything. Like my line of communication with the Japanese was like next level.
Wow.
Like absolutely next level. I was communicating with them guys all the time.
So support was great.
Unbelievable. And so we put a case forward to run Shannon in World Supersport in 2003. And it must have been late in the year back in those days. I can't remember. Anyway, so Japan sent over a complete motorcycle, a World Supersport bike, and a great truckload of spares and all this stuff. And we did it their way, and it did not work. The bike was good, but it just did not work. Then in 2004, we had the idea to do the same thing, but with Brooksy, but our way. And so what we did is I asked Japan for just certain parts, like a motor, radiator, exhaust, ECU, parts that we needed to go fast, and then just use our chassis. And that worked so good, so good. And yeah, it just went, like that weekend just was unbelievable. And we had a really good tech from Pirelli working with us, who's still there now. I think his name's Giorgio, big grey-haired guy. And he was obviously pretty young back then, but like he was just on our case all the time. As soon as Brooksy would roll in, he was on it. And I just remember he'd always come in, he'd say more compression, more compression, more compression into the shock. And I'm just piling more compression into this thing, and then pull it apart, and more compression inside, and more compression. And he was just looking at the tyre. And anyway, Brooksy's just getting faster and faster and faster all weekend. And anyway, passed old mate Kev Curtin at MG and won the race.
That's huge, eh?
Man, it was so big for us, for the team, and for Honda Australia. But ultimately, I think it was bad for Brooksy, because I'll say this, that I don't think that the Europeans that was the first time that anyone had ever won a World Supersport race as a wild card.
Wow.
And I don't think that the Europeans liked it.
Yep.
And they definitely made Brooksy's life difficult when he went into World Supersport, because he left us to go into World Supersport in 2000, at the end of 2005.
Yeah, that's brutal, isn't it? So they made,
I'm certain they made it hard for him.
Yep.
So because he had a couple of pretty tough years there. But yeah, anyway, that was it was a good weekend.
Yeah, especially Phillip Island. It's such a track where everyone looks at globally too, isn't it? So it would have been good. What's the conversation with Honda after that? That'd be a pretty nice.
Yeah, like
nice back to the factory.
Yeah. It was it was a pretty special time for sure. Yeah. Like I said, my communication with the Japanese was I back in those days, I was part of my job was to make a report after every race weekend here in Australia, report on the motorcycles, the conditions, the competition, every part. Like I had a templated report that I had to put together, and so they obviously looked at that and used that information, and I'd imagine they were doing that globally. And like that was a part of my job, and like I was always either on the phone or on email to someone from either R&D at the factory, Honda, or at Showa. I made a really good contact at Showa. His name was Arai, Takahishi Arai, who's not there anymore. He was working with Honda's MotoGP team at the time, and I built a great relationship with him.
Wow, that's crazy. It's crazy to see, like, now it's not like that. It's so different now.
No.
Yeah.
There is no...
In such a short time.
Well, to be honest, I still have communication with one guy at Honda, still now, even though I'm not even with Honda. I still communicate with him around Honda CBR 600 and 1000 things. But not like back then. Like, back then, if we needed more power from the CBR 1000, I'll never forget, like, once I sent a report to Japan and we needed more power at this point. I can't remember when it was, and I told them exactly what the issues were, what our competition was, and the differences, and blah blah blah. And next thing on my desk is a package. Open it up. There's 2 ECUs there. Bolted them on. Boom, power.
Wow.
And that's what it was like,
Yeah.
But that's all gone.
How factory were those bikes in 04, 05?
They were just all built by my guys inside.
Not crazy things though. Like
no. Like what we would do would be, like anyone can go and buy 100 pistons and find the most the best rated pistons, or the correct weight, or the same with conrods or stuff like that. What we would do would be to go to R&D, and they would send me a kit of all standard parts, but just all perfectly matched, and you bolt all that stuff into a motor, and a standard motor with standard cases and standard head and standard, and it all works at its absolute best, because it's just, and that's all they were doing when they were building like a racing spec engine, was just building it with all the best parts. So that's what we would do. That's all it was. Yeah.
Gee, they must have come together so well, because they were such a good package, eh?
Yeah, they were a really, really good usable motorbike. Yeah.
Tell me about 06, 07, when 06, 07 started to come around. There was an update for the Fireblade. Small update, but there was an update. Obviously come out of the championship 04, 05. How'd that year come about?
Yes, so I'm just trying to recall all that. So we were with Michelin at the time, and they wanted to. So Brooksy was going overseas. So I'm pretty certain at that time we might have brought in Glenn Allerton maybe, I can't remember. Anyway, we did a heap of testing at the end of '05 at Phillip Island for Michelin, like Michelin overseas, around Supersport tyres.
Yep.
And some new Superbike product. And anyway, we tested all these Supersport tyres, and both boys said, that's the Supersport tyre we need.
Wow.
And they come back and, Michelin come back and said, no, you can't have that tyre, that's too confidential. Okay, righto. So they provided us a tyre that the both boys completely hated.
Yep.
And so then, in '06, when Glenn, I'm certain it was Glenn Allerton and Brooksy, Brooksy must have still been there at that point.
Yep.
They couldn't ride the bike.
Yeah, right.
Well, they couldn't ride the 600, and then because they were riding both classes, they couldn't ride the superbike either because they had no confidence.
Yep.
So it wrecked the whole project.
Yep.
That was '06. It was just, they were nowhere on anything. So then '07, Brooksy headed off overseas. We hired Russell Holland.
Yeah.
And maybe Glenn.
I think Brian. I think
Brian
Brian came
Starring
in. Yeah.
maybe was there on a satellite 600.
Yep.
And maybe Jason O'Halloran. Maybe Jason O'Halloran was there at that point. Maybe he came in 8. But anyway, we switched to Pirelli.
Yep.
And that was the best thing we could have ever done.
Yep.
Once again, the bike started going fast again, and it was just, everything started working again. '08 come along, and that new model, there was another model change in the CBR 1000, that was instant success.
Yep.
I remember going to Adelaide. Maybe Adelaide might have been the first round of the championship, maybe. I remember going over there and Tony Hinton saying to me, because I think at that stage maybe Tony was general manager of motorcycles, and we always had a really tight relationship, myself, Tony and Glenn Griffiths.
Yep.
And Tony said to me, Freebie, we need to win this weekend. We've got to win. And this is how it's like with the Japanese. There's no second.
Yep.
And I said, so what do you want me to do? I said, what can I offer the riders? A double bonus money, as in their win bonus.
Yep.
Yep, do it. So I went to the boys and I said, whoever wins this weekend, whatever, you get double bonus money. Righto, we're on. So Allerton goes out, gets pole, wins both races.
Damn.
And it's just like, man, and Allerton was so hard to beat that year. Like when that guy's on, he is on.
Yep.
And that's why I've got the greatest respect for the guy. That was an unbelievable year.
Because he won that year, the 08 Fireblade.
Yep.
And that's insane, isn't it? Double win bonus.
Double win bonus, and they were earning decent bonus money too. So.
Yeah, we'll get to 08 because it's an interesting time as well, because we get into GFC time. There's that time as well. So because you get to the start of the year where there's double bonuses, to the end of the year when the whole world sort of goes a bit different, doesn't it? So
yeah.
07, like you had Motor Logic that year. That was sort of the start of your own business.
So
And the dirt. I guess you did the dirt team at the same time.
No. I never touched the dirt stuff until much later.
Oh, okay.
Much later. 16. That brings me back to another really interesting time. Was 07. So that. So at the end of mid 07.
Yep.
Mid 07. Sorry, I'm stumbling a bit because I'm just stretching my memory. 07 mid. Stuart come to me and said, "Look, Freddie, we need to shift racing out of here. We want to shift racing out of here.
Yep.
And we want you, or are you interested in setting up something to operate it from outside?" Okay, cool. Yeah, I'm up for that. And so that's when I went away and established Motor Logic.
Yeah.
And it was a big thing. Like, it was a big thing for me. It was for my wife. Like, we were taking on something, a big responsibility. So anyway, so it was like August or whatever. We took it on, set everything up, got the premises, built it up, got everything organised. We're up and running. Had a huge media launch at our factory. Everyone was there. It was huge. And then a couple of days before Christmas, Stuart comes to me and he says, "Freebie, we've got a problem." This was the time of the GFC. Was this 2000? No, was this time or was it 2008? End of 2008.
Yeah.
Maybe it was end of 2008 that the GFC hit. So we're up and running with MotorLogic, and then we had a 3-year contract. That's right. And yes, this is correct. We had a 3-year contract. We've run 1 year of the contract.
Yep.
2 years left to run, and Stuart comes to me at Christmas and says, "We've got a problem, Freebie. We've got to shut it down." And I'm like, "Stuart, I've got a 2-year contract and I've got everything swinging on this." Because we had to look after, we were just contracted to Honda. So we had a monthly check come in from Honda as sponsorship. That was it. And so we were custodian of their bikes. We were looking after all the sponsorship. We were looking after the riders' contracts. We were looking after the sponsors' contracts, looking after everything. Myself and my wife were in deep. And so anyway, so at the end of 2008, Stuart wants to finish this up because the GFC's just hit.
Yep.
Shit's hit the fan. And anyway, so he said, I said, "Look, you're going to have to pay us out." And he said, "Well, what's it going to cost me?" I said, "Well, at least the contract fee of what's remaining for the 2 years." And he said, "Righto, let's do that." So we were cut free and on our own. And sometimes I look back and think, I kept racing. I kept going.
Yeah.
And that's why in 2009 we run under a banner called Oleon MotorLogic Racing.
Yeah. Yep.
And Oleon was an oil blending company based in Melbourne. Quite a good business. Shane's still there, still trading under the same brand and the same business. He might have changed a little bit over the years, but he was there, and he was a great supporter.
Yep.
And we used his product, and it was great. He looked after us. Anyway, so that was 2009, and we nearly won that championship again with Wayne.
Yep.
But Wayne, and it's always turn 12's always to me known now as Wayne's Creek, because in one of the last races of the year at Phillip Island, Wayne had that championship sewn up, and he just really needed to stay on the motorbike. But first lap on the first race of the day, Wayne comes through there, hit a little trickle of water, and launched himself into orbit, put him out for the day. Lost the championship.
Damn. Yep.
Anyway, so that was 2009 done. Yeah, 2010 we decided we had no contract with Honda. We still had some funds, and we decided to go racing with Ducati. So met up with Wally Lee.
Yep.
And we formed a partnership there, which we run for a year.
Yep.
And that was interesting.
On 1098.
Yep.
Yep.
That we employed Jamie Stouffer.
Mm-hmm.
And that was where Jamie and us as MotorLogic come together.
Yep.
And it was an interesting time, and they accredited us MotorLogic as a service centre in Melbourne.
Yep.
And we drew a lot of business from that through our service centre, and it was a great relationship. And even though we stopped racing with Ducati in 2011, they never took away our accreditation or anything. It was, they left that there until 17 when we packed up.
It's a good way to keep the shop going as well, isn't it? Like both things, have racing, have the Ducati servicing and equipment work. Yeah. Wow, that's crazy how that worked. I wonder what the Oleon, I knew it was a lubricant, but I wonder what the relationship and how that was. So. Because they were on the bikes for a while. Yeah, they were for a good few years. Yeah, not just that 1 year, as predominantly as Oleon MotorLogic Racing. Yep. They were. Shane was with us for probably, I would say, 4 or 5 years, something like that. Yeah, he supported us. He was a great supporter, good bloke, a really good bloke. How were the Russell Holland, Brian Starring in that times, 07? How was that? So just context, I did my first stint at Pirelli in that time. So I was working in Sydney
Okay.
for Galvin's at the time.
Yep.
And I remember photos coming back, because even then phones weren't really a thing, mobile phones. There's a photo every now and then of Ty gets sent back through from Russell and stuff like that. So how was that time?
Yeah, it was interesting.
Yep.
Russell was an interesting character, like
Yep.
a really likeable bloke. Really likeable bloke. But, yeah, just a bit, I don't know, I don't know, like hot and cold maybe.
Right.
But, yeah, he was, he definitely had some very, very, very good points about him and could ride a motorbike. Could ride. But, yeah, just ultimately didn't put it together.
Yep.
Yeah, and he only lasted the 1 year with us. Yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
What about tests, racing? What was any good highlights around that time? 6, 7, 8? Obviously, Glenn winning the championship in that year. Any good things that can ring the bell? Good moments?
Like we did some. Like, we're involved in some testing at Phillip Island there with the Japanese. Like one test, for as an example, we did. There, I can't remember what time of year or when it was, but they brought out, they might have been testing a Dunlop tyre, the Japanese,
Yep.
and they brought out Kainari-san. And the guys that I was working with around the CBR 1000 project
Yep.
at the R&D centre, they come across with him to conduct this test. So they must have been testing Honda stuff as much as Dunlop stuff.
Yep.
It must have been for some championship somewhere they were racing on Dunlop. I don't know. And yeah, anyway, and that was pretty cool. You know when that was? That was when the 08 blade first come to us.
Right.
And once again, yeah, that's right. This was pretty cool. We yeah, so the 08 blade, it was Glenn Allerton and Jason O'Halloran. First ride those boys ever had on that bike. And once again, I grafted a show a fork cartridge into the fork and a shock into it, and probably some sort of muffler or slip-on or system or whatever. And we went to Phillip Island, and Jason, we were on Dunlop, and back in those days it was those old N-Tech things, and they were like grippy as hell.
Yeah, yep.
And Jason O'Halloran did a 32 something, I can't remember whether it was high, low or whatever, and Kainari couldn't get near it. And that was Jason's first ride on that bike, and it was the first time that we'd ever wheeled it out of the garage. And it was just like, wow, you know, like it was special.
Yeah, that's quick.
Yeah, Kainari sounds like, oh.
It's a good intro to 08 model, isn't it?
Yeah, it was pretty cool. That was a pretty cool test.
They're a good bike, eh?
Yeah.
They were good. Yeah. Obviously ran that model for a long time.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Far out. That's, winning the championship in 08 with Glenn, that must have been a wild ride.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was pretty special. Like I said, I've still got a really, really soft spot for Glenn. And when he's on, no one's going to beat him. There's no chance. It's just a shame that we haven't been able to see that for whatever reason in the latter part of his career.
Yep.
But, yeah, in the early days, like, you give him a motorbike and a team around him that made him feel at home, no one going to beat him. No one.
It's such a Sunday racer. Like, turn up Sunday and, like, this is a switch that's on for racing, you know. So, ease into the weekend sort of person, isn't it? So,
yeah. It's funny you say about that switch, you know, like there's certain people need certain things around them or, you know, like with riders and that to switch from, you know, doing whatever to hopping on that bike and just, you know, doing it. Jamie Stouffer's he was just incredible. Like, he could be there just talking or doing whatever, or have his kids all over him on his shoulders or whatever, you know what I mean, and just doing stuff and then just go, boom, I'm on.
Wow.
And just switch. His ability to switch was just next level. Anyway.
Mate, to look at the riders that you had through the door, like if you look at Allerton, Brooks,
Krusty,
Greedy, Krusty.
Yeah, Adam Ferguson. He was
Stauffer.
He was when he was focused.
Yep.
And the problem was the poor bastard. He just couldn't stay focused. But when he was focused, he was incredible.
Right.
Incredible.
Yep.
And he was a big guy. And he was 100 kilos at some points, and he was riding around the outside of lightweight guys.
Yep.
And like I remember doing some testing with Michelin at different times, and there was this one particular guy, I can't even remember his name, at Glasses, and he loved Adam because and he had some experience with Adam in World Supersport.
Yep.
And he did all of his Michelin testing with Adam because he'd know that Adam would go out, do one, his first flying lap would be ultimately his best.
Yep.
And that was what he was so good at, was just going out, boom. And he would come every time. I remember this little French guy, he'd go, have the stopwatch, and he'd go, pop, and he'd show me, he'd be like, that's fast, first flying lap every time. Pop, every time.
Far out.
And when he was focused, he was so good, but just such an arsehole. Just wasted his life, the poor bastard.
Yeah.
And he won't mind me saying that because he did. He had so much opportunity, and he was so naturally talented.
Just a natural at motorcycle racing.
Natural. Yep. Absolutely natural.
Far out. It's crazy, isn't it?
Yeah.
So, yeah, what is it? 600 championship, Superbike championship. Obviously, it was the two, wasn't it, I think?
Yeah. In the 1 year.
In the 1 year, yeah.
Yeah. And then, just dwindled away from him from there.
How'd you go after, obviously, being in the Honda world for so long, to go to that Ducati for the 1098? Was that a big jump? Yeah,
it was a change for sure.
Yeah.
Like Japanese bikes, you can be, like being respectful, you can be a little bit, lackluster in certain areas, but with an Italian bike, you've got to be precise, and you've got to look after them with like fluffy gloves. You
delicate.
Know what I mean?
Yeah.
Very delicate. And we had a lot of problems, a lot of teething problems, you know what I mean, as you would just not knowing the product.
Yep.
And but by the end of the year, like we had that bike, it was humming, and Jamie was right there like all the time. And he rode that thing so good. It was an interesting time for sure.
Jumping into the ASC era, which is just after, like the 14, 15 sort of thing. How's that? Obviously, winning titles. I think it's the only time ever that 3 bikes have stood atop a podium ever for a year, for a series.
Yeah.
That's pretty full on. Yeah,
it was. It was, yeah. We sort of 11 and 12 and whatever it was, 13 was sort of floating around, sort of about, you know what I mean. But when we shifted to ASC, it was at a time, excuse me, that ASBK, I think it was known as ASBK at that time, was sort of struggling, not really going anywhere, not doing anything. They needed a kick in the arse. And we shifted. I talked Tony and Glenn and Stuart into shifting across to ASC.
So Honda's come back in at this point, like they're...
Or Honda, sorry. 11.
Yep.
Honda, I jumped MotorLogic and my business, everything jumped back in with Honda in 11.
Yep.
And they come back on and supported us, and we never left until we never separated until the end at 17.
Yep.
So we're working away, and we're sort of struggling along there with different things that I was playing with, and anyway, it sort of didn't work. Yep. And we had various riders over the time, more so Jamie and Wayne, but come and go, you know what I mean? It just didn't happen. Anyway, then we went to ASC with Terry, and that was a time where the Honda should not have won. It was by far the most underpowered machine.
Yep.
By far, like compared to the Kawasaki and some of the stuff we were competing against, it was way underpowered. Like I'm talking 30 horsepower.
Yep.
But we still made it win. And it was all just about grip because we were on these concrete hard Dunlop slicks,
Yep.
and they were like concrete. And we, between myself and Sean, who was my tech at the time, Sean Clark, we come up with some really clever ways of mechanically making that bike fine grip.
Yep.
And when I look back now, it's like, that was pretty clever because there's a lot of that shit sort of goes on now. Anyway, we found grip and our riders won. And I think it was 14. I think it was 14 was the first year there. We had the update of the SP version with the Öhlins forks, Öhlins shock. And at the start, all I did was just gutted the shock and the forks, or just modified standard stuff. Do you know what I mean? With some support from Steve Kramer and just modified the standard Öhlins. We were just using the Nix 30. Like there was in the forks, it was basic as. And because everything was so basic, like we could just run one bike per rider and have one spare bike. And so, 14, I'm just trying to remember whether Herfoss come into the picture in 14 or not. Or where.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, he, so I'm pretty sure we had Hookie, Josh Hook, Jamie Stouffer, and Wayne Maxwell. No, mate, yeah. Anyway, I think that's how it was. And then Troy come along as well. I think that's how it was.
Yep.
Yeah. Because originally we started the year with Josh Hook and Jamie contracted.
Yep.
And then Wayne was out of a ride because something turned to shit with his Yamaha thing, I think. And he came back to us and he had nothing going on. Anyway, I went to Link and put a deal together through Motul because you might remember his bike was Motul Honda.
Yep.
And so I got support for him through Link and that helped us run him.
Yep.
And then down the track, Herfoss come along and, he... that was originally going to be a satellite deal.
Wow.
And so we were originally just going to help him, give him a bike and a bit of support, and there you go, you know what I mean? And then that quickly turned into his bike's in the truck, and anyway, 4 riders, and that was 2 years of amazing competition.
Yeah.
Between those riders, it was pretty special.
4 special riders, isn't it?
Massively.
Yep.
Yeah, and they were pinching wins off each other flat out.
Yep.
And so I think in 15 Wayne won both of those ASC championships, whatever they were called. Yep. And then I think 16 Troy won both. I'm pretty sure.
Yep.
Yeah. And Hookie might have. Hookie headed off doing stuff in with Honda in Japan. Yeah.
Yep. Josh Hook's incredibly talented, eh?
He is an incredibly talented kid, yes. Yep. He is. I shouldn't say kid anymore.
He's been doing it a while now, but yeah.
He was a kid when I first met Josh.
I can imagine.
Same as Mike Jones.
Yep.
I was running a CBR 150 project for Honda.
Yep.
Come and try it project.
Yeah, right.
And I had a fleet of CBR 150s, and I was travelling the country in that shitty old truck of Ben's.
Yep.
And going to all these different go-kart circuits.
Yep.
This was another part of my job at Honda. And that was where I first met Hookie and Jonesy. They were both skinny little bloody kids.
Yep.
And, they would have been 12, 13, something like that. And those two, they both come through our program in different ways. Yep. Hookie come through through 600. I think he might have even... We did a little project there at one point with Morawaki. We always had a great relationship with Morawaki, and my relationship with Midori is still really, really strong. They produced a little 250 there at one point and I think it was probably around 2006, 7, somewhere there, and that's when they started up what they called a 250 mono class here in Australia at Australian Championship, and we had Jonesy come through one year, and Brodie Waters was another year. That's right. I think Brodie was the first year and Jonesy the second year. I think that's how it rolled. Anyway, that was, yeah.
That's crazy, because you had one of the Moriwaki family ride for you
We did,
for a bit, hey, as well. That's right, isn't it?
Shogo,
Yeah,
Midori's brother.
Yep.
Yeah, he filled in for a couple of events here for someone that was injured.
Yep. Yeah, in that mid-2000s or something as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
Good relationship.
Yeah. That's lovely family.
It's crazy to see over the years how many... Every race has come through the doors of that Honda team as such, hasn't it, really? There's been a lot.
At some point. There's been a lot of them at some point, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
What was the relationship by the time 16 comes around? There's a new Fireblade in 17. Was it still the same sort of thing with the Honda factory? Were you still getting
No.
No?
No, when that GFC hit, that all stopped.
Really? Yep. The
All
line
stopped.
of communication, everything went...
It all stopped.
Probably lost so many people, like different jobs and stuff.
Possibly, yeah. A lot of things changed.
Yep.
Yeah, a lot of things. Yeah, a lot of those old guys that were at Japan that I used to deal with. I shouldn't say old guys because they weren't old, but
Just
those.
being there for...
But they were very westernised because they'd been around the traps. You know what I mean? And you could talk to them like normal.
Yep.
And they'd understand what you were talking about and what you were asking for.
Yep.
Where now it's just very, very different. And that all stopped at GFC point.
Yep. It's crazy that thing just changed. Obviously, it changed everything, but even those relationship things, like it just...
100%.
Yep.
100%. It just... Yeah. There was one little guy at Honda, Ishii-san.
Yep.
And... in the early part there, when things were all strong communication, he was always around the Grand Prix. He was a little fella, short grey hair and glasses, and he was around the, like I said, those mid-2000s point. And when we were at the Grand Prix and I'd be in the truck working or whatever, or in the pit, and he'd always come up and he'd go, "G'day, Skip." And it's just, "Where's Skip?" It was, that was the level that we're at, and it's just such a shame that all went.
Disappears.
Just disappeared. Yeah.
It's just crazy. Crazy to think that that's the way it was, and every brand too. Like, it's not just subjected to one; it was everyone. So
yeah.
You've been a rider, you've been a team manager, a team owner, you've been involved in the Honda Corporation. From a rider's perspective to a team owner's perspective, what was one of the contingencies one day that you went, far out? Should I be paying this? Has there been one? Especially pre-GFC, because there were some good bonuses around. Was there been one that you've gone, far out, that was a pretty good bonus for a rider? Without revealing a number.
Yeah.
Because coming from a rider's perspective, especially as a privateer like you did for so long, it's you're scratching everything to get to a point.
Yeah.
To get to it, you don't get paid for it usually.
Yeah.
Sometimes you're like, far out, that was a good payday.
I don't know. I can't remember one that's like especially.
Yep. That double for Glenn's a good one, 2008.
Yeah, that's right. Like I always negotiated a bonus for my business, MotorLogic, into the contract with Honda if we won a championship. I thought if if I'm doing a good job, they're going to do a good job, so we should be rewarded as well, which Honda never ever had a problem with. We used to put in way more than we should into the race team, and that's ultimately what finished us, it just, we put in more than we should have. And look, things changed a lot over the years where, in the early days, money was plentiful, and then in the latter part, it got more difficult to find money because we were responsible to find and jack up what the shortfall between what Honda put in and what the race team cost. And it just become more and more difficult,
Yep.
Yeah. So, Yeah.
How's technology changed it?
that's changed a lot.
Yeah.
It's become a lot safer for the rider,
Yeah.
a lot safer. Like in our day, high sides were the only crash.
Yeah.
You know, nowadays a high side's few and far between.
The front end lost all the time now, isn't it?
Always.
Yeah.
Always. It's created a lot more cost. Not just in the product of the electronics package, but in a superbike team now here in Australia cannot run properly with just how we used to do it.
Yes.
You know, it can't just be a rider and one tech. It can't just be a rider and two techs. It needs to be a minimum of a rider, a mechanic working on the bike, and a couple of an electronics and a suspension guy really to really be on top of it.
It's insane now, isn't it?
And that's minimum.
Yeah.
That's minimum. If you want to be competitive, that's what it's going to cost.
It's really difficult in the way of the bikes are more expensive. Everything about it's more expensive, but even the inherent labour is more people.
Yeah.
There's not one part now, is there, that you go, there's this cost reduction, or there's not one. Like,
no.
We, and I appreciate it. We employ media people. There's media people coming as well. Like for each team's got a media person basically now, or something like that.
The higher end teams anyway.
All that. There's no shortcutting it now, and the grid's getting smaller and smaller, and you're like, how do you change it? I just don't see how you shortcut it now. You need those people.
You do.
Yeah.
You do 100%. Otherwise, you are just not going to be competitive.
Fail. Yeah.
You're going to be top 10 at best on a good day.
Yep.
And even though the field's only 17 strong or whatever, like it's in Superbike, I think that's what it was at Morecambe Park the other week.
Something like that. Yeah.
That's just how it is, and it's just the way that the world has gone.
Yep.
And I'm not saying it's a bad thing. It's a good
the new
thing
reality.
because it's the new reality, and it's safer, and it's just technology. And we did testing years and years and years ago. I can't remember when it would have been, but it was pre-ABS.
Yep.
And it was pre-electronics, and we had the option at Honda to take part in a global program with Honda to run a bike and test and develop a race bike and test and develop an ABS system on the racetrack. And we opted not to. I can't remember what year this was, but that was pre all this stuff.
Yep.
And that's how determined Honda were to make it work.
Yep.
Before fly-by-wire, and this was all a part of that. Do you know what I mean? Like, this is what they wanted us to test on a racetrack.
Yep.
Anyway, that was a time, you know, and
That's crazy to see that.
Yeah, but back to your original question. Yeah, it's a very, very heavy time now to run a race team, a superbike race team, and to run it properly, to be competitive. I always say, running a race team, and I've always had exactly the same approach, and I've never changed it.
Yep.
And that is, a race team has got to be run just like a business. And if you've got a business that has all the right ingredients, and that starts at the rider, then goes to the machine, to the personnel, you are going to win.
Yep.
There is no question if you put all that stuff together properly. And that's why we had so much success over all those years, because we just kept putting the right ingredients. I had guys that had come to work with me. I'd be needing someone. One guy lasted one weekend. I said, dude, thanks for your help, but no thanks. Because I can see if it's going to work, and everyone needs to gel and fit together, you know. And the more people you get nowadays with all these different requirements, people need to be able to work together and have a joke and say something without getting offended or whatever. And it just takes something like that to put someone off, and the ingredients aren't right.
Correct.
It's very, very difficult.
Because you have a look at the days too, like they're stressful days. They're a Saturday at Morecambe Park 3 weeks ago. We're on track for 55 minutes over the whole day, maybe. You guys are working till 11 o'clock Saturday night.
Yeah.
You know, it's a tense day. There's been an accident. There's been crash repair damage. It just takes one person that is a sour grape amongst that field. It makes your life torture.
Yeah.
When you're away and trying to be
100%.
cohesive.
100%.
Yep.
100%. Absolutely. And that's why I say, like, the guy that lasted one weekend, you know,
Yep.
I said to my wife after the weekend, I said, this dude don't fit. And
Yep.
she said, I know. And I said, I just got to get rid of him, you know,
Yep.
like, you just know. And it's just, you know, it's very, very difficult to find people.
Yep.
And it's very difficult. It's becoming more difficult because there's not a lot of incentive, or there's not a lot of training. There's no training for guys to do what I've done.
Yep.
Again, not blowing smoke up my arse at all, but like, I've put in the hard yards and I've learnt the hard way and learnt myself in a lot of cases. But there's not a lot of guys around coming through that do what I do.
Yep.
And, you know, the Phil Tatons and those type of guys that are just leaving the sport.
Yep.
So it's a difficult time.
Relationship with Troy. You've won championships with him and that. You've had to travel a lot with him. How's that?
We've had our ups and downs. We've had a lot of ups.
Yep.
A lot of ups.
Yep.
Like, I love Troy to death. I was on the side of his bed in Darwin when he had that monster crash. I've been through some. When he had a massive crash there in 2021 or whatever it was at Colvin, when he face planted at that track. And anyway, like, I've been through some pretty horrendous shit with Troy, but I love him to death. I love him to death. He'll always be a huge part of my life.
Yep.
Huge part. Yeah.
Because one of those things, you travel in the role you're in, you travel together so much too. There's a lot of downtime.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. That's what I say, back to the ingredients back there.
Yeah.
You know, like,
Yep.
excuse me, people need to click, and for a tech working directly with a rider,
Yep.
you need to form a very special bond, a bond closer than most people could ever imagine.
Yep.
And that is a bond of trust. And until you have that bond with someone, like you know, I've had with a number of guys over the years, success is stretched, or is you know, like, is hard. When a bond becomes so close, you don't even have to say anything to each other. And, you know, like, in the end with Troy, like, at the end of 23, like, man, I could tell just by looking at him what he needed. You know what I mean? Like, and I could tell just by looking at him and looking at the data and looking at the bike, and we didn't have to talk. I just knew. And I think, that's ultimate. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like,
definitely.
and that's why I see, you know, when you see guys in World Championship, whether it's Grand Prix, World Superbike, whatever, and they find someone
Yep.
that they ultimately trust and they have that level of relationship with, that they can talk about anything, they can talk about nothing, and they can just be together.
Yep.
And when you've got that, you never want to let that go.
No.
And that's why they move together.
Yeah. The best friendships are ones you don't have to entertain.
100%.
Isn't it? It's just a friendship, you know.
100%.
So, you know, and that's professionally or whatever. Like,
Yeah.
it just happens.
Yeah.
So
100%. Yeah. Yeah. Like, even though Troy lives not far from me in Varsity Lakes, we're only, 25 minutes apart
Yep.
or whatever, but I don't see him very often. But when we do run into each other or whatever, or we're communicating, it's just normal.
and you've been through some shit together. So that's going to be a bond for a long time.
Yeah.
How far had he come? That bike came from 2017 to 2023. Like, to get that title last year, like, that obviously evolution of that bike had changed and stuff, but it was a big change. That bike mid 2020, 2021 was not where it was at the end of last year.
No.
That
No.
must have been a huge challenge.
Yeah. Yeah, it was. And I had a little separation from those guys
Yeah.
there 2022, start of 22. Did something else that I thought I needed to do with a Yamaha team, but that never worked out.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I started working with those guys again because there's a period there where I spent a bit of time with Ducati again.
Yeah. Because you came back for the Bayless era,
Yes,
the
yes.
Troyes. Yep.
So when I packed up all my shit in Melbourne and
So you shut the shop down. That's
yeah.
right. Yep.
yeah, so myself and my wife, we decided that at the end of coming through 2017, our contract was due with Honda.
Yep.
And I said to her, like, this is getting too hard. Like, sponsorship's too hard to get. Everything's getting too hard. Let's just make it easy on ourselves. Let's sell everything we've got and just clear off. So we did.
Yep.
We sold everything besides our vehicles and moved to Queensland, to the Gold Coast. No job, no nothing lined up.
Yep.
And I didn't even get out of Melbourne, and Troy rang me and he said, "What are you doing?" And I said, "Well, I'm going to Queensland." And he said, "Well, I'm going to make a return to racing. Do you want to come and work with me as my crew chief?" I'm like, you know, who wouldn't take up that opportunity?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, that's what started off that. And so, yeah, working with Troy, that was pretty cool. Pretty cool. Very challenging, but pretty cool. And that lasted that 2018 period. 19, the start of 19, he obviously got injured and he pulled the pin, and Jonesy stepped in and ultimately won the championship.
Yeah. Yep.
Which was super cool. Like that was, you know, for me that was start back in when he was a kid to finish.
Yeah.
My job's complete here. You know what I mean? Like,
and to have it at that day, probably one of the most down to the wire superbike. That was intense. Against
Troy.
Yeah, an assassin. Like, two great competitors. You know.
Totally different.
Yep.
Competitors about their craft, the way they go about their craft.
Yep.
And yeah, it was interesting going into that last event. Jonesy, like I know what he's capable of.
Yeah.
100% trust him. And he said, "How am I going to do this?" And I said, "Mate, like if you deep down inside need this bad enough, you'll win it. You just got to need it bad enough." And he came out and won it. And that was a really, really special moment. One moment that brought me to tears. I was like, done. You might have a look in a lot of the photos on the podium and that, or, you know, like in the Parc Fermé and that. I'm not there because I was back having a little tear with my wife on the phone.
It was...
Anyway, it was a really cool moment. And but anyway, then after that, I moved back working with Dion. Because Dion took over the operation of the Honda. He took the contract over from me in 18 and started that up, and I moved back working with those guys in 2020 with Troy and blah, blah, blah. But the Troy of that, well, I suppose in 2020 we went close to winning what was a couple of event championship, but we had a failure with the bike at Wakefield Park, and that took him out of it, which was unfortunate, but anyway, it is what it is. Learning process. And then there was a couple of years of all that.
21 had the
COVID bullshit. And then 23. It was a to start off. It was a very difficult year. To say the least. But yeah, look, we worked through our challenges. And I had a really good offsider working with me, and this is what I go back to saying about people. Like in that team, we had two mechanics, Ian and Glenn, Ian Collier and Glenn Granger, and then we had Charlie Hallam, who was at that point was doing all the bike prep in Melbourne because I was living in Queensland, and he was also the electronics engineer. and then me looking after chassis and suspension. So 4 guys working around one guy.
Yep.
And like I said, it started off as challenging. We worked through it, and ultimately come out way stronger at the end. And in the end there, like, I don't know how many races he won that year. Probably, was it probably 8 or something
6
like
or 8
that?
or something. Yeah.
And he was to the point of being almost unbeatable. And it was so special. So special. Yeah, just another really good time in my life.
Especially in a bike globally that it's been a tough road to see it win 6-8 races in a championship. That was a special day at Tailem last year.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. And it's always interesting to me that, the Honda CBR 1000 globally has not had a lot of success.
No.
But our bike has always been around and about the top,
Yep.
It's always been very close.
Yep.
So I don't know whether it's in a production form that it's exceptionally good. Maybe that's worked for us. I don't know.
That bike at the end of last year looked sensational. Like, you just watch it on track and it just danced. Like, it just was there, everywhere it got to. So obviously a lot of work to get to that point, but it wasn't moving around. It wasn't doing it. Just such a good combination.
Yeah. Yeah, and he could do anything with that. Like, I remember talking to Brock Pearson after the event.
Yep.
Brock was on the Ducati, obviously, and Troy, in the morning warm-up, Troy went out and he was determined to show everyone just how fast he was.
Yep.
And I think in that morning warm-up, he might have went as fast or faster than the qualifying time. And Brock said, he said, I was going down the straight on one lap and I sat up for turn 1 and Troy come past me on the tank, tucked in, still full gas. And he said he hit the brakes and turned in. He said, I could not believe what that bike just did.
Damn.
He said, full credit to you guys. You've just nailed it.
Yeah.
And to hear that about your bike and your rider combo, it's just like... That's special. And
it was like that, wasn't it? That whole weekend, it was quick.
Yeah. We everyone did the test there prior to the event, and there was certain guys were going fairly fast or whatnot, and I could attend. There was 3 days, and I could attend the first 2, and then I was jetting off to Italy, and so I left Charlie there in charge with Troy, and we'd tested everything and done everything we needed to do, and then the 3rd day was just about tyres because an event or a test or whatever earlier in the year. Dion wanted us. Dion was always very specific, and this was where a great combination comes together.
Yep.
As Dion, as the owner of the team, he was always very specific on what he wanted us to do and test at a test, and he always had he was always about massive structure, and that I fitted in perfect into that structure because I am so structured.
Yep.
And anyway, at one of the tests previous, must have been Phillip Island maybe, we didn't get through Dion's whole test program that he wanted us to test with tyres and with the different compounds. And so at this tail and bend test prior to the race event, we got through everything in the first 2 days of chassis, and then the last day I left Charlie and Troy on their own. This is what we're testing, and this is it. Don't touch anything else. Yep. Cool, this is all good. And Troy went out on an SCX and just smashed it. Like, he was so fast, and Charlie was so excited. He sent me a photo of the Motec data of the laps sequence, and we knew, like, that guy was on, like, absolutely on. And when someone's got that level of confidence, it's just unbreakable.
Yep. So it's 100%, isn't it?
Yep.
Wow.
Yep.
So how long out from that? That would have been like the 5-week test or whatever, 4 or 5 weeks before?
Yeah, it was something like that.
Yep.
Yeah, it was probably something like that because I went to Italy for 2 weeks and then come back and we're pretty much straight there,
So you're going from Troy that's 35 or something, and it's won championships, won this and that. This year you've got Cam Dunker, Max Alpha.
Yeah.
You're on Yamahas, which is a different thing again.
Yeah.
How's that?
Yeah, it's good because it's been an interesting year. I'm working with Jamie, not as a rider, but as two techs working together.
Yeah.
Yeah, Jamie's incredibly intelligent.
Yep.
Incredibly intelligent. And
have you seen that change? Not change, but have you seen that grow since like 2010 was probably the first time you worked with him in the Ducati?
Yeah.
Have you seen that change? Like rider to tech as such?
Oh, yeah,
now?
100%. Yeah. He has completely converted himself.
Wow.
And he is one guy that is a brilliant tech and understands
Yep.
The motorcycle 100%. He's brilliant. Yeah, so, but yeah, look, working with Max, I don't do a lot with Cam's side of the garage.
Okay.
I supply the Bitubo suspension product for both riders.
Yep.
But I don't do a lot with Cam. They sort of look after their own side. I'm contracted, if you like to call it, to work with Max's side.
Yep.
And look after him. So that's what I do.
Yep.
And yeah, Max is going exceptionally well.
Yep.
He's still got a lot to learn as far as racecraft, but he is so close to breaking through to his first win.
Yep.
And I think once he does, it'll be like a massive weight relieved, and then he'll be away. Yeah, and I know Jonesy knows that.
Yeah.
Yeah, but he's going so well, Max. And look, so is Cam for the amount of help that he gets.
Yep.
And look, he's getting good help, but he's not getting ultimate help from a team of people that are, you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
Like what we spoke about earlier in the session.
He's going fantastic though, first year. Hey?
He's going fantastic. That kid is special.
Yep.
Absolutely special. And I use that word only around certain things in my life. And that kid is special.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's a good environment. Like they've got good people around them in that team, but they're really two great young humans too.
Yeah,
they're good people. You know, so which is really nice to sort of see and work with and deal with, and they're it's a nice environment.
Yeah, so. It is. There's been some tender points there through the early process of, because that's ultimately been mums and dads and riders. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Kids. And there's been a transition there, which was a little bit uncomfortable at times, where it became a little bit corporatised.
Yep.
But everyone worked through that, and everyone found their spot pretty quickly, and it's all worked out for the better.
Yep.
And it's a good little team. It's a good little team. It's probably as good a team around Max as anyone could ask for.
Definitely. And like look at him at Morgan Park.
Yeah.
On song, like the whole weekend.
I'm sure if he didn't have that crash on Saturday qualifying, on Sunday he would have potentially not just led those races to the mid-race distance when he worn out through injuries. He would have potentially been there to fight Jonesy at the end.
Definitely. And one of the riders at the moment that just goes out and just puts a lap in. Lap after lap after lap. Like there's not much looking around waiting for, you know what I mean? Like I watch him, I have to film things at the track and I'm like, far out, he's on every lap. So you come back, look at the data, it'd be, on, so definitely trying.
Yeah, he's definitely trying, all right. He's dedicated to the cause.
For sure. What's been a good day in motorsport after all these years? What's been a real good day?
That's a good question. That is a good question. I don't know. Hard one to answer off the cuff like that.
There's a few.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I honestly can't answer that as one. You know, like we've been through a lot of stuff in this conversation. I just I don't know.
And you still love it?
I would say my passion for racing is waning.
Yep.
I've since I've sense. I've not long taken over the Australian distribution rights for Bitubo suspension.
Yep.
It's a product out of Italy, and it's been something that I've been working at, trying to do something like this for quite a fair few years, and it come off at the end of last year. And it is definitely taking a lot of my focus, and I'm not a salesman. Not a salesman at all. And a big part of this job is selling, but I'm going about it a different way to being a salesman. So it's working. I feel it's working. Anyway, it's taken a lot of my focus, and I'm really enjoying it. So this year with racing has not been like any other year with racing that I've been involved in, because in the past I've lived and breathed it. This year I'm just going to events or tests, and in between is nothing. And that's no discredit to anyone that I'm working with or anything that's going on. It's just what it is. And it's probably because I'm shifting my focus away from racing. When I go there, I give Max the best of my knowledge and ability. But when I'm away, I'm thinking about what I'm doing here now, trying to make money and trying to build a business long term at 53. Racing is getting a bit old. And I potentially see this as possibly being my last year involved. At the moment.
How's Bitubo?
Bitubo is really good.
Enjoying it?
Yeah, I am. I'm enjoying it so much. One thing I am getting out of going racing with Jamie and Max and the guys is I'm learning a lot about my product and about what I can get out of it and what I can do and what it does, and Max's feedback and this and that, and and then another team that I help out through Chris Jones with a Kawasaki 600. I'm learning some stuff there. It's Bitubo's good. It's very unknown product in this country, globally. I'll say that. Bitubo is one of those companies. They've been around since '67, and the amount of world champion Australians that have ridden on Bitubo, the list you would not even believe, in speedway and road racing championships. It's been around for a long time. They are a company traditionally Italian that are great at manufacturing a high quality product, but terrible at marketing it.
Damn.
And so for me to build up this brand to the level where I know it can be is a massively steep hill. You know what I mean? It's huge. But anyway, look, I've got Bitubo shocks on my Indian Scout, and I have it sitting in the front of my workshop on display with all the product around it. And I had a guy come in the other day, and he said to me, "Oh, these things are just like Olin's." I'm like, how hard do I have to work? You know what I mean? So I'm up for the challenge. Don't get me wrong, but I've got a massive job to do, and I've just got to keep my head down, and I've got great support from my wife to get into this and to put in whatever we need to put in to make it work. We're just gonna get into it and go for it.
It's good to see. Like it's just another phase of life, isn't it? It's the next challenge in the next chapter, next challenge. That's
something I must say is like my wife. She's been a massive support. Like I met her when I just started at Honda, only weeks after, and we got married only a few years later, and she still supports me and loves me to this day. So she's been a massive supporter of all those years, and we worked together over over all those years together, day in, day out, and just kept plodding along, you know.
Because the motorsport world is not a conventional journey.
No,
It's a bit similar to farming in a way.
Yeah.
There's like a real, you know, ups, there's the downs, there's everything in between. There's a lot of work goes into it. It's very much a similar idea, and far out it can be a tough business, but it can be a great opportunity and great business at sometimes too.
Yeah, well, look, it's been good to me,
Yep.
you know, for a long time, and you know, I wouldn't be here doing this today, and
Yep.
I wouldn't be the Australian distributor for Bitubo, and I wouldn't be able to say that and had that experience. And do you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
I've done okay.
Yeah.
I've done okay, and I've got a lot left in me too. So
Absolutely. I just can't believe that contact that made when you're just 17. That's the whole. That's here now. 53.
Pivotal.
Yeah, massively.
Pivotal time in my life.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%.
Well, mate, thanks for your time.
Thank you.
That's all we have time for on today's show. If you get the chance, head over to YouTube and hit subscribe on the Talk and Chatter page. Also, head over to iTunes and give us a star rating and a review there. It all helps to get the podcast out there. A big thank you goes to everyone that's been doing this already, and we'll be back with another show soon.